Operations on functions basically is asking about or talking about adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing functions. Now what I've done is I've given you two different functions right here, f of x and g of x. And the first question is asking you to add them. So this just means I want to take those two functions and add them together. So I'm going to write out f of x, and I'm going to use parentheses, 3x squared plus 2x plus 9. Whoop. Let's fix that. And I'm going to add to that, parentheses, g of x. So I'm going to write g of x, which is 6x minus 5. Now, when I want to add these together, the first thing I check is, do I have anything on the outside to distribute? And I do not. Okay, there's no number out here that I have to multiply. So in this case, the parentheses aren't really doing anything major. I can go ahead and add like terms. So I only have one x squared term, so I'm going to write that down, 3x squared. I have a pair of x to the first power terms, 2x plus 6x is 8x. And finally, uh-oh, you didn't catch me. This was not a plus 9, it was a minus 9. So let's fix that real quick. We caught it in time. Minus 9 plus a minus 5 is a minus 14. And there's my answer. Now the second problem is asking you to subtract. And unlike addition, subtraction order is extremely important. So I have to be very careful how I write these. This is asking for g of x minus f of x. And again, I'm going to use parentheses. G of x, 6x minus 5, minus f of x, which is 3x squared, plus 2x minus 9. And I have to remember when I'm subtracting that the minus sign is going to always have to distribute to every term that follows it, because I'm subtracting the entire function. So if I want to rewrite this, distributing the minus sign, I have a minus 3x squared, a minus 2x, and a minus negative 9. Or you can just write plus 9, which we'll do in a minute. Now let's put everything in order and combine like terms. I have a negative 3x squared. I have a 6x minus 2x, which is a positive 4x. And I'm going to remember that minus a negative is plus a positive. And I have a negative 5 plus 9, which is plus 4. Negative 3x squared plus 4x plus 4. Multiplication means I'm going to take f of x, 3x squared plus 2x minus 9, and multiply it by g of x, 6x minus 5. Now, we talked about this in class. The word FOIL, or the acronym FOIL, does not actually pertain because this has 3 terms, but the concept is the same. I'm basically going to distribute 3x squared times each of these two values, then 2x times each of these two values, and finally negative 9 times each of these two values. So let's go ahead and try that. 3x squared times 6x is 18x cubed. 3x squared times negative 5 is a negative 15x squared. Now for the 2x. 2x times 6x is 12x squared. 2x times the negative 5 is negative 10x. Now the negative 9. Negative 9 times 6x is negative 54x. And negative 9 times negative 5 is a positive 45. When I combine like terms, I have 18x cubed, because that's the only one I have. I have a negative 15 plus a 12x squared, which is a negative 3 or minus 3x squared. I have a negative 10x and a negative 54x, which is a negative 64x. And at the end, I have a plus 45. And I'm going to put a box around it. And then finally, the easy one comes. G over f of x. That's just a division. And I'm going to take the g function first, which is 6x minus 5, and put it over 3x squared plus 2x minus 9. Now, very important, this 3 will not, absolutely not, go into that 6, because those are little pieces. This is not a 6. It's a 6x minus 5. It's all together. So either you knock the whole thing off or you don't touch it. So you cannot cancel or knock out pieces of a binomial or trinomial. And later on in the course we'll get into maybe you could factor something like that, but it's not going to reduce. I'm not going to worry about that right now. That's it. That's my final answer. So that one was pretty simple. All I had to do is make sure I put the g in the numerator and the f function in the denominator. Now, that was operations on functions. Now we have composite functions. Composite functions take one function and kind of mix it into another function. So here are my two new f of x and g of x functions, and I've defined them for you. Now the first question is asking for what is f of g of x. I wrote in here, start with the f function. Remember, you always start with the first function. So let's write that down. I know f of x is equal to 7x minus 4. Now, what am I going to do? I'm going to substitute in for x what? The g function. So the g function is 5x plus 8. So I'm going to replace x with a 5x plus 8. Whoop, equals 7 times. I'm going to take out the x and put in a 5x plus 8. And then don't forget that minus 4 on the end. Distribute your 7, and you have 35x plus 56 minus 4. My final answer is 35x plus 52. All right, let's try this again. But this time we're going to do g of f of x. Again, I'm going to always start with the first one you see, the g function. So let's write it down. If you get into the habit of writing it down, it might make things a lot easier to work with. I know I'm starting with the g function, so I'm going to write it down. Once I have a function, what do I have to do? I have to take out x and replace it with something. What am I going to replace it with? F of x. So f of x is 7x minus 4. 7x minus 4. So in here I'm going to take out the x and replace it with 7x minus 4. Now all I have to do is distribute, simplify, and get a final expression. 5 times 7x is 35x. 5 times negative 4 is negative 20, plus 8. My final answer is 35x minus 12. Negative 20 plus 8 is negative 12. Notice in this case, I did not get the same answer. F of x, f of g of x is not the same as g of f of x. And so you can't assume you're going to get the same thing each time. And the final concept for this section, this is section 1-2, is iterates. So if I give you a function, let's make up one, 2x plus 7. And I know that x sub 0, because I have to have this information. You can't answer the question without this information. X sub 0 is negative 3. All right, so the question that I'm going to ask you is, what are the first 3 iterates? In other words, I want x sub 1, x sub 2, and x sub 3. So, how do I find that? I take x sub 0, which is negative 3, and just plug it in. 2 times negative 3 plus 7. Negative 6 plus 7 is 1. My first iterate is 1. I hope you can see that. Uh-oh. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug a 1 in to find x sub 2. I take the answer for x sub 1 and plug it in. So I'm going to plug in a 1. That was my answer for the first one. So 2 times 1 plus 7 equals 2 plus 7, or 9. 9 is my second iterate. Finally, x sub 3. All I have to do is take the 9, plug it in, and I'm done. 2 times 9 plus 7 is 18 plus 7, or 25. All set. I found my 3 iterates. All right, I guess we're done.